You scroll through your phone at 11 at night. The room is quiet, everyone you know is technically one tap away. And yet something in your chest feels emptier than it did an hour ago. You tell yourself it's just a mood. It isn't. What you're feeling right now might not have started with you at all. It might have started with someone you've never even met. For decades, scientists treated loneliness like a private weather system, something that formed inside one person's head, drifting alone, affecting no one but them. But that idea turned out to be wrong, completely wrong. Loneliness doesn't stay where it starts. It moves, it spreads, it jumps from person to person, like something almost biological, passing through friendships, families, and entire communities without anyone noticing it happening. Think about the last time you felt truly disconnected. Maybe it followed a breakup. Maybe it followed a move to a new city or a job that kept you behind a screen for 10 hours a day. It felt personal. It felt like your problem to solve. But researchers who spent years tracking real human networks found something stranger underneath all of it. Loneliness behaves less like an emotion and more like a signal, quietly transmitted from one nervous system to another. In 2009, a psychologist named John Cacioppo, working alongside network scientists Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, decided to test something almost nobody had tested before. They used data from the Framingham Heart Study, a research project that had been quietly tracking thousands of people in a small Massachusetts town for decades. Not just their health, their relationships, who they were friends with, who their friends were friends with, an entire web of human connection mapped out like a circuit board. What they found inside that web changed how scientists understood human emotion forever. Loneliness didn't just appear randomly across the population. It clustered. People on the edges of the social network, the ones with fewer connections, were far more likely to become lonely over time. But here's the part that should unsettle you. It wasn't only about how many friends someone had. It was about whether the people around them were lonely too. If your friend became lonely, your own risk of becoming lonely increased. Not by a small amount, by roughly 50%. And it didn't stop there. A friend of your friend, someone you've possibly never spoken to, someone whose name you might not even know, could still shift your emotional state. The effect weakened with distance, the way ripples weaken as they move outward from a stone dropped in water. But it didn't disappear. 3 degrees of separation. That's how far loneliness could travel through a human network before finally fading out. Why would an emotion behave like this? Why would something so personal move through people who've never met? To understand that, you have to go back further than Framingham, further than modern psychology altogether. You have to go back to a version of you that lived tens of thousands of years earlier in small mobile groups, entirely dependent on the people around you for survival. Back then, isolation wasn't an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. A human being cut off from the group had no protection from predators, no help gathering food, no one to notice if they got sick or hurt. Evolution built a warning system for exactly this danger: discomfort, restlessness, that heavy, hollow feeling you get when you're disconnected, loneliness. That warning system worked exactly the way it was supposed to. It pushed our ancestors back toward the group. But warning systems in a species aren't just personal, they're social. If one member of a group began withdrawing, becoming distant, becoming harder to reach, that behavior itself became information for everyone nearby. It signaled that something in the group's safety net was fraying. Other members would have picked up on subtle shifts, tone, posture, eye contact, engagement, and unconsciously mirrored them, not because they wanted to, because that's what social nervous systems do. They synchronize. This is where researcher Julianne Holt-Lunstad enters the picture. In a large-scale analysis combining data from more than 300,000 participants, she found that the health consequences of social isolation were comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, not metaphorically comparable, statistically comparable in terms of mortality risk. Loneliness wasn't just an unpleasant feeling that lived quietly in someone's mind. It was a measurable physical threat, one that raised inflammation, disrupted sleep, and weakened the immune system in ways nearly identical to chronic stress. Now put those two findings together. Loneliness spreads between people, and loneliness damages the body in ways almost as severe as physical illness. What you're left with is something closer to a contagious disease than an emotion. Not literally contagious the way a virus is, but functionally contagious, moving through social contact, weakening whoever it touches, and quietly increasing the odds that they'll pass it on to someone else. Does that change how you think about your own bad days? Or the people in your life who seem to be pulling away? Here's where the story gets even harder to sit with. Political scientist Robert Putnam spent years documenting a slow, steady decline in what he called social capital, the invisible web of clubs, gatherings, shared meals, and community rituals that used to bind people together automatically without anyone having to try. Bowling leagues, church groups, neighborhood associations. Not because any of these were magical in themselves, but because they forced regular, low-effort contact between people who might otherwise drift apart. That web has been thinning for decades, and into the gap left behind, something else arrived. Screens, feeds, notifications that mimic the feeling of connection without providing the substance of it. You can have 400 online friends and still register biologically as isolated. Your nervous system doesn't count likes. It counts presence, shared space, eye contact, tone of voice. And when those things disappear, the ancient warning system fires anyway, regardless of how many digital contacts sit in your phone. This is the modern mirror hiding inside the Framingham data. If loneliness spreads through networks, and modern life has quietly rewired what a network even looks like, then the conditions for a slow-moving epidemic of disconnection were already built into the architecture of daily life before most people even noticed it happening. Nobody chose this. It simply accumulated: one screen, one canceled gathering, one thinning friendship at a time. So think again about that 11 o'clock feeling. The one where the room feels a little too quiet and everyone still feels a little too far away. It might not have started with a bad day. It might have started 3 friendships away from you, in a person you've never met, whose isolation quietly rippled outward until it reached the edge of your own life. Loneliness was never designed to be a life sentence. It was designed as a signal, an old survival mechanism telling you to move back toward other people, which means the same forces that spread it can, in theory, spread its opposite. Connection moves through networks too. Warmth, attention, a short conversation at exactly the right moment. Christakis and Fowler's data didn't just show sadness rippling outward, it showed happiness doing the same thing, passing from person to person, strengthening the closer someone lived, the more often they interacted, the more genuinely they showed up. You scroll through your phone at 11 at night. The room is quiet, but this time you notice something different. That heaviness in your chest was never only yours to begin with. It travels, which means it can be interrupted. One phone call, one unscheduled visit. One moment of actually being present with another human being, undiluted by a screen, it might not just change your night, it might 3 degrees away change someone else's too. You scroll through your phone at 11 at night. The room is quiet, everyone you know is technically one tap away, and yet something in your chest feels emptier than it did an hour ago. You tell yourself it's just a mood. It isn't. What you're feeling right now might not have started with you at all. It might have started with someone you've never even met.